This off. We have a quorum. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call our meeting to order for the March 17th meeting for the City of Erie Land Bank. And to do so, I would seek a motion to approve the consent agenda and the meeting minutes from our February 17th meeting.
I move it.
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, let's move on to our finance report.
Thank you. So first you have the balance sheet in front of you. On the back of that should be the profit and loss. It was showing a total net income of $44,287.56. And then you also have a copy of the check detail. It shows the checks that were dispersed in February. And then the budget versus actual, which carries over a little bit onto the back, but again shows the net income of a little over $44,000.
We are all caught up on everything from the county.
As far as the end of February goes, yes.
Okay. Any questions on financials? So just a quick question, and I think it's more timing. The condemnation acquisition and the rehabilitation lines were running a little ahead of pace on an annual basis, but is that just because we're...
On the budget versus actual? Is
Yeah.
that?
That's more of a timing issue? Is that just...
That's right. Yeah, I think there was some properties from last year that are coming into play that were added into the budget. So that's, yeah, some bills and I think, I'd have to get clarification what property it is, but we completed legal action on a land bank property that had been hanging out there for some time.
That's all I had. Any other questions? Good. Okay, I'd seek a motion to approve the finance report as presented.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, takes us to, thank you, April. Takes us to citizens'
Chris, who was the
comments.
second on that?
Chuck,
Tie between Paul and...
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, takes us to citizens' comments. Do we have any citizens to be heard today? Any citizens' comments? If so, please step up to the microphone. Afternoon.
Good afternoon to all of you. I think I know everyone here. I am Bishop Dwayne Brock. I'm representing the Eastside Renaissance. And I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for an opportunity to speak. We are moving with deliberate and calculated speed to do something really that has never been done before here in Erie, Pennsylvania. As you know, less than 3% of minorities own their own home within the city of Erie. And so we have been moving with deliberate speed to try to change that dynamic. So we want to work along with, of course, the Erie Land Bank. And I would love to ask the Land Bank to move quickly on the transfer of properties. Construction season is getting ready to begin, and we've been, of course, working along with Erie Bank. We've been able to bring Erie Bank to 10th and Parade. Our concentration, of course, has been on the Wallace Street area, but all over the city. I believe that we can do a better job in handling the blight problem within the city of Erie. And I think the quicker the land bank would do certain necessities and transfers, the quicker that we can have people to build homes in what we have considered to be the blighted areas within our city. We are currently concentrating on the Wallace Street area from 12th Street all the way down to 6th Street. And if you walk that neighborhood, as you know, it looks like a war zone. We want to change that. We have the ability to change that. I think we have the means to change that. But we want the Erie Land Bank to do what is necessary, transfer properties not only there, but all over the city of Erie, so we can change that dynamic within our city. That's it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I got a question. Bishop Bry, have you identified those properties and addresses?
Yes, sir. We have several properties identified. Our chairman of our executive directors here, Mr. Paul Hamilton, we have a listing of all of those properties, and then other properties that I think our city, Mr. Gamble, can do a better job. And it's a win-win situation, not only just for the city of Erie expanding the city tax base, but also it gives individuals an opportunity to participate in the American dream. So yes, but we do have a listing of properties through Eastside Renaissance.
Okay. All right.
I have a
And
question,
you aware of
too.
those properties?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Bishop Rock?
Yes, sir.
Has Erie Bank made a commitment to finance some construction in the city? I know they have that new location nearby there.
Yes, we just, in fact, it's interesting you're asking the question. This comes from the board meeting, and we've talked about it again. It's being reiterated that Erie Bank has set aside a total of $500,000 to help as far as the purchase of homes for those who have, again, been marginalized. Money has been set aside. They have several programs ready to rock and roll, ready to begin. The Front Door Project, the Open Door Project, and other projects that's specifically designed to help the purchase of new homes and the construction of new homes. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, any other citizens to be heard? Any other citizens' comments? Hearing none, we'll close that out and move to the report of the executive director. Aaron?
All right, good afternoon. So just one thing for my report this afternoon. Finalized some discussions with the solicitor for the Erie School District this morning. I believe we're set to have our memorandum of understanding between the land bank and the school district on the April agenda for approval. That is the MOU is referenced in our intergovernmental agreement associated with our 5-year 50-50 tax split. So once that is in place, the land bank will be able to invoice the school district for our 50% of the tax revenue of all the properties that we have conveyed since inception and that have been sold and have paid taxes since that time. So the invoices are ready. We've just been working through this MOU to get that approved. So here by the end of April, we'll have that, and I'll be able to move forward with that. So that's my report for today.
So far, those discussions have gone back and forth pretty well.
Yeah, been very, very good. A little bit of just cleanup, formatting. That was about it. So I think we're both familiar and aware of what we need it for and why we need it. So.
Okay.
Aaron, I got a follow up on what Bishop Brock brought
Yeah.
to our attention. Could you let us know or give us an update on particular properties that Eastside Renaissance is looking at?
Right, so as far as the number of the properties on the list that Paul and Kyle and myself have been going back and forth on, I can't quite remember that total, but it includes the 3 that are on the agenda today, along with some properties that we have acquired off the 2024 judicial tax sale, along with, I believe there's a couple properties that are still tied up in legal action. So of course, we can't move on a property until a point in which we have done every part that we need to be able to convey it. So we're moving on the ones that we can transfer or enter into developer agreements. And then as the other ones come online and are available, we'll move on those ones as well.
Okay, and you'll identify those properties to us?
Yeah, I could pass that list on to
Yeah,
you.
thanks.
That's not a problem.
I have a question. As to the 85 properties that have been sold so far, has there been any new construction on any of them?
There has not.
Were some of them sold with derelict structures that have since been renovated?
I can send the board the exact numbers, but yes, there has been some. I believe we're at now, Kyle and I did 2 final inspections last week. I believe that brings our total of rehabilitated structures to 6, 7 possibly if I'm missing one. There's another, I believe, 5 or 6 with developer agreements hanging out there. Kyle's following up with some of those since there's a couple from 2022 that have not been rehabilitated yet or issued a certificate of completion. The rest of those transfers have been vacant lots, side lots.
And most of them have been for that use of being a side lot. Somebody wants some green space next to their house.
Yes. Yeah, I'll put together a little report, send the list out to the board of kind of what the demographic as far as our property transfers looks like.
Okay, any other questions for Aaron? Are you going to cover the solicitor's report too?
Yeah,
December
absolutely.
Can't be with us today. So.
Yeah, Gene's out of town, sends his apologies for not being able to be here. Sales of properties, we're working through the sale of some parcels, a couple of those to Bayfront Eastside Task Force and some of the other properties as far as side lot proposals and such. Erie County is interested in purchasing a parcel owned by the land bank in East 16th, 400 block of East 16th Street. Still waiting to receive a proposal from them on that. Outstanding tax issues, 13 properties that the land bank approved a resolution on has been approved by the school district and sent back and sent to the tax claim bureau. So we're waiting on those to be removed. Still working on the ejectment action at 621 Wallace. She will be served by the sheriff's department here pretty soon to take care of that issue. And then the quiet title actions continue on numerous properties due to clearing the title associated with the judicial tax sale and condemnation actions that have occurred on those properties. And then there's a deed raised to ELB, 221 Locust Street. It was just the finalization of that process of land bank requesting condemnation, redevelopment authority, taking the property, going through the legal process, and now finally conveying it over after everything's been cleaned and ready for the land bank.
I have a question on that. You have 4 parcels that are under contract at best?
Yes.
Why are they purchasing them? Are they planning to construct on them, or is this a side lot situation? Or
So these were 4 properties acquired off the 2022 judicial tax sale. One had a structure on it. It was in an effort for them to assemble a group of lots in that 400 block of East 5th Street. They have, I believe, 6 or 7 other parcels in a row there. So they're trying to assemble some land they could develop on. There's no plans. The other parcels, the 3 there, the East 5th Street, the Ash Street, it's essentially an alleyway and a parcel in the middle of the block. At the time that they entered into a conduit sales agreement with the land bank, there was a garage there. The intent was to rehabilitate the garage and utilize it as storage for their operations. That following winter, the garage collapsed. We ended up, the land bank demolished the garage, and it is now an empty concrete slab that they're going to potentially use to put a storage unit on or other such structure for their operations, but they're not sure yet. So we had to clear some title, do some quiet title action, and so those are ready to be transferred.
Thank you.
Aaron, has Wallace been delayed beyond the normal process? It seems like that's been hanging out for a while.
No, that injectment action takes a considerable amount of time. She refused service for some time, so we had to hire the constable to serve her. So it's just
We're still within the normal.
yeah. And every time we have a conversation with her, she does communicate with Jean. There's always that she's going to be out on Friday, and then that doesn't happen. And so then we follow through with the next step in the process. So.
Questions on the solicitor's report? Hearing none, we will move to unfinished business and new business.
All right. So number one is the Land Bank Realtor license listing agreement with Pennington Lines Real Estate back in, I believe it was August and September of last year in collaboration with the County Land Bank. We put out an RFP for realtors. We did it once, received one response from Pennington Lines. Christie put it out again. We received no other responses to that request. So last month, the County Land Bank proceeded with entering into an agreement with Pennington Lines, very similar to the one that's in front of you today. So I'm asking the board to enter into an agreement with Pennington Lines Real Estate for our listing services. Really, when we look at this and we go back to a lot of the developer agreements that were asked about, and that our reach hasn't been great. And so what can we do to increase that? And so the thought of putting some of these parcels on the MLS would help our exposure to individuals who aren't necessarily looking at our website or our social media or other such avenues that we advertise these properties. I mean, we put signage in front of them, but not everybody drives down Plum Street or West Fifth Street or whatever the case would be. So the agreement, let me find the last page is, so this would be an agreement for for vacant lots, it would be $75 flat fee per parcel, 1 year listing, and $750 seller paid commission upon sale. Structures would again be $75 flat fee per property, 1 year listing, minimum commission of the hire of $2,250 or 6%. So, and this wouldn't be every vacant lot. Certainly there's a clause in there where we do retain the option to market any of our properties without the realty services. So side lots, things like that, we wouldn't have to pay the $750, but there are lots like 221 Locust, 1737 West 6th Street that with proper exposure might gain us some better responses to that. So certainly we can, as a board, you can choose which properties you feel we should list. It is my opinion that any properties, at least right now, we've put out for developer proposals, that we utilize the realty services. I think we can gain a little, like I said, better exposure and hopefully a higher price as we go forward. And certainly there is, the last line is consulting services with Patrick Groner Jr. offered at a rate of $100 an hour, mainly because, when we look at some of these properties, certainly the expertise of a realtor in listing price and other such things as the board continues to look at the policies and make amendments would be a tremendous asset to the Land Bank Board. So certainly that should be compensated as well.
So you would only list those two that you mentioned initially, or you have several others that you would list?
Those are the two that I can think of off the top of my head. There might be some other parcels or groups of parcels that we could list as available, but certainly we wouldn't want to list a 35-foot lot in between two properties that's only used as a side lot. There's really no marketability there, and it wouldn't be worth our time to list a property like that we're going to sell for $500. So
I think it's a good idea because you'll expose those properties to the general public on the realtor site then.
yeah.
And that's the best way to get the best price.
Well, that's like I said, historically what we maintain a list of interested developers that we put, an email out to when properties go for sale. We list them on our website. We put a sign in the front yard or in the window, but that's the only exposure we get. We hit them on social media, Facebook and such. But again, that's it. So only the people who have historically looked at our properties are the ones looking at it, which we do our best to put it out there, but this gives us that extra little bit. And so, I mean, certainly the ones who have got our properties in the past and have been successful with it won't like the added exposure, but that's not the point. We want to be as transparent and equitable across the board as we can, and this will help with that.
But the best developer we have had has been ourselves with that house that we toured a few weeks ago. I mean, that's going to go on the market and sell. That's going to help support that neighborhood up there. I mean, that's our objective.
Yes.
In other words, our developers haven't come through for us, so we need to try some other things.
Yes, 100%. I mean,
And I'm just going to say, and those of you who've been on the board with me for a while, I've been bringing this up over and over again for quite some time, that we have got to have a larger megaphone, right? We can't just be trying to market these ourselves. The key is getting it into the main bloodstream of the market, which is the MLS system. You've got to get it out there and broaden our reach significantly. I'm obviously going to be abstaining from this, but I'm happy to see that we got at least one response. And I do want to say that the rates are well below the typical market rate for real estate agents as well. But I would really expect a real uptick in activity once this is put out there to the broader public and into the multi-list system. And certainly, like you said, not every side lot's going to be put in there, but we hold some valuable property also. And the word has got to get out there, and I do believe we'll be presented with some opportunities we haven't been able to generate ourselves yet. So I'm excited for this. And it's really part of that evolution that I've talked about. You know, our land bank is still fairly young. We've made a lot of progress. But we do have to evolve from just tackling blighted property to focusing on rehab, focusing on new construction. And this is part of that step. So I'm happy to see that we have a proposal. And I will be abstaining from this. Thank you.
I'd move we approve this listing
I
contract.
got a question, Mr. Nichols. It's on the consulting services fee of $100. Is that, I mean, explain that. I mean, I thought we're hiring a realtor. He does it. And so where's the consulting fee? What's that for?
so my thought would be so I'm not a real estate expert. And I know, sometimes it's a struggle for the board to understand, certain parts of real estate. And speaking with, Mr. Groner, as far as the last week with the real estate, it came to the point is sometimes it would be a necessity for support of different policies and things to have somebody with that institutional knowledge, as the third party person to speak to the board and talk about how this would work. And so certainly back, the staff of the authority has changed and switched. We no longer have a licensed realtor on staff. I found that just wasn't a necessity to have somebody with a real estate license on staff at the redevelopment authority. So when we start looking at some properties, having the ability to look at different things and make a determination about how things should work, especially when we're looking at the next item on the agenda, the 4.11, the pledge and refund policy and things like that. So if there's questions that pertain to how that would work or how that would be looked at by a potential buyer, I can't answer that question. That's something that the real estate professional would have a better understanding of as opposed to myself. And certainly there comes a point where some people can do that pro bono, but there comes also a time when their time is worth money and we should certainly compensate them for that.
But $100 an hour, that's norm? Is that the scale locally? I don't know.
I would say for a consultant hourly rate, that's very reasonable.
I guess I'll jump back in on this. I see this as potentially a cost savings because there are some questions that we don't necessarily have to go to our solicitor with all the time now, which is at a higher rate. If it has to do with Pennsylvania real estate law as a licensed broker in the state, I think this is going to take some of the need to filter everything through our solicitor
I would
away.
agree.
And it's at a lower rate than what we would be.
Yes.
So I just want to put that out there, that not every question has to now go to our solicitor.
Sure. And we can maybe periodically review invoices just to, this is a new concept for us. So maybe every quarter we take a peek at invoicing and see what the utilization of the consulting services have been. It's just to raise our own comfort level because we don't know.
We'll still monitor it,
Okay,
keep an eye on it. Looks like it's out of line.
absolutely.
I have a question. So after each year, do we revisit these properties if they have not sold within that 1 year?
I would say
Did it
yes.
determine-
I mean, I would say if we haven't got offers in 6 months, we may want to look at what potential we have to revise what we're putting out there. I mean, so.
And we would want to get from the listing agent a report on how many inquiries he'd had, things like that, which a realtor normally wouldn't. They're trying to sell it and then move on. We want to get some feedback from Patrick. So, if we bring him in here at a meeting in 6 months, what has happened, I think we certainly should compensate him for that, because that's out of the ordinary for a listing contract. We want to get some information on what he's hearing from the public as to whether or not, we're getting sufficient interest in the properties. Is it a price issue? What's the problem? And, I think that would be very valuable feedback.
Thanks, Chris.
Well, like I said, I'm going to abstain, but I would,
I'll move it again. We're ready to go.
And I'll second the motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
And I abstain. Motion carries. Thank you. Takes us to updating our policies and procedures with what we talked about for the past couple months with working with new developers on our land. Aaron, you want to give a quick summary?
Yeah. All right. Just trying to figure out how this was laid out for the, okay. So quick summary is, so the thought is what we try to do to increase the marketability of our lots and our parcels. And so, something that, we've talked about and Chris has mentioned many times. And so how do we look at, a way to incentivize the development of these parcels? And so, we've worked on some things. We made some amendments to the policies as far as developer agreements go. But now looking at this and what maybe we can do on the land bank side as a small piece to help incentivize a developer who would be going after a property and seeking a loan on the property. And so I spent some time researching a bunch of different land banks from across the country, different policies and such, and kind of put a whole bunch of stuff into one revised section of our policies and procedures at 4.11, equity pledge and refund policy. And so I laid out really three big things, A, B, and C. And then there's a couple things at the bottom as far as, how we would proceed, would put the sale of the property or our proceeds from the sale of that vacant lot back into the developer's hands at the end of it. So, and certainly ease just board discretion. So I spent a lot of time on this. I wrapped my head around it back a week ago. And then, so, I put this in front of you. And so I can answer some questions now, but I'm kind of foggy on a few things at this point. But,
Well, I'll just start with a comment.
Yeah.
I think you encapsulated what I have been talking about and thinking about actually very well, and explaining the difference between pledged equity and gifting that equity. We're certainly, there's not going to be any kind of transfer until we know the project is completed as they stated it was going to be completed. But I think it's important that early on, we have a willingness to pledge that. And that's in a conditional commitment letter, that if you do follow through on this and there's a certificate of occupancy issued, then there will be a refund of these expenses that you've occurred throughout the process. So, there's a way to do this without giving the store away, so to speak. But, it goes back to those 3 points that I brought up a couple months ago. Advertising this as a package, right? Reminding people of the 100% LRTA for 10 years. Being willing to gift the land back once you actually build a house. and then coming up with a flexible, low-cost financing tool. I think if you add those three together, plus an aggressive advertising strategy that's out there in the multi-list system, you're going to catch some attention. You're going to get people who are going to now say, yeah, I forgot I can build a house in the city and not pay taxes on it for 10 years. It's been there the whole time, but they're not even thinking of it.
Yeah.
So, this is part of that overall picture. I think the summary you put together explained it well. It's pretty much exactly what I had in mind. And so I'm sure we're going to find a need to maybe tweak this as we go, because we're building, what'd you say last month, building the bicycle while we're riding it or something like that.
Yeah.
But we're trying to catch a building season here, and we're trying to get things moving. And I think this is a great start combined with everything else. So I think your explanation was a good one.
Yeah, I tried to get, when I was really looking at, it said like 1737 West 6th Street. And I wanted to try to get an appraised value of that land, because that's essentially, what you're looking at when you're thinking of gifting it. But, to Chris's point, there isn't a lot of examples for a region or an area or a city like Erie as far as how this goes. So, when we look across the state, Philadelphia has a very great, process and plan for how they use this similar situation, but they're selling lots for $20,000. We're selling for $500. There's a big difference. There's a lot more equity to gift there. So certainly some of our lots, this model works, some of it won't. But I think it's, to Chris's point, it's a good start. Our policies and procedures are constantly changing as we learn, adapt, take the feedback from, inquiries and such, and make these changes to continuously try to make it as good as possible. So, yeah.
And I just want to make one more point too. I want to be clear that it's still the board's discretion per request that comes through. This is a broad swipe at this, but like a Locust Street or a West 6th Street, it's going to be a different conversation than a side lot. And we're not going to necessarily entertain, one request like we would with another. So we're still going to be able to look at this individually each month as you present development proposals.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I assume Gene looked through the.
What's that?
Gene was comfortable with
Yeah. I
everything.
sent it down to Gene. He said, he didn't have any questions or comments on it. So he said forward it off to the board.
I would look for a motion to accept this.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't either. So is this, what's the timing on this? Is this some degree of immediacy or?
We don't have any properties in front of us today that would, are potentially asking for this. It's not even available yet. So certainly it's something the board can review over the next month, and we can have it on the agenda for an actionable item, at that time.
Appreciate that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Would be good if we could start advertising this though.
Because we do, yeah. Well, that is a fair
I mean,
point.
part of the reason was I'm trying to catch a building season. I'd like us to start advertising these properties, get them in the MLS.
Because we do have we do have some structures that Kyle is going to prepare to get over to the realtor, if, pending the approval of the realty agreement today, that we could get listed up there for developer proposals. So, it's the will of the board. I certainly, if the board wants to move it forward today, that's your
Well, I
discussion.
think what Chris is saying, what we're saying is, can we take a look at this or approve it next month? But it's okay to move forward with advertising, right? Or you can't do the advertising.
Well, I don't want to say
I can't advertise a policy that's not approved by the board. So,
I think last month we were generally comfortable with the concept.
And
We still have discretion over each one that's brought to us too.
yeah, I think that's the ultimate point is letter E gives the board discretion and it has to be brought forth with the proposal for the board to approve. So certainly you will have the chance to revise. Well, one, review the language. We can always make amendments to the policies and procedures, but also you have the discretion to approve or deny any request with every proposal that comes forth.
Well, we list these 2 lots. You would like to include in that there'd be a refund of the lot purchase price if a home was built within a certain amount of time? I mean, it would certainly create more interest, but so I'm in favor of us going forward with it now. But what would be the time limitation on that? You wouldn't sell it to somebody unless they were going to build something in the next year or so, or would you give them 5 years or?
I certainly wouldn't give them 5 years, but I would certainly leave that up to the discretion of the board. I'll put typically we put proposals that we feel are adequate and meet what we feel, and what I feel as would be acceptable to the land bank board. Certainly, we want to see development, but we also remain cognizant of our building season in Erie, Pennsylvania. I mean, we get into August, we get into July and August, they're not going to build in 2025, they're going to build in 2026. So certainly, it might be up to 18 months development period. It could be 12, it could be 18, it could be 20 to 24, depending upon the size of the development. Somebody could, speaking of the one parcel we have, it could be split. There could be subdivision. There could be development of 2 parcels on, so they're dependent upon what the proposal is, could ultimately determines the length of the agreed upon timeline.
I think as you bring each one to us, so let's say you bring one to us in September or October, that's one where we may want to give them 18 months, right? Because we're heading in the winter. You bring one to us February or March, we may say that's 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
But the key is we're still going to have every single one presented to us individually, which we can then tweak. Like this doesn't cement us into any specific time frame, any specific overall offer. It's just saying that we have this concept we're going to offer as an incentive, but you still have to come to this board with your proposal, and it has to make sense to us. And we may still say no.
And we're not really giving away that much. I mean, we've got such a huge task here. I went into this a little bit last month. There is the one in my neighborhood. I live in Northwest Erie, 4th and Mohawk, and the West 6th Street lot. To put a 2,000 square foot house up there that would fit in that neighborhood would cost $500,000. In my neighborhood, houses are selling for maybe $125 a square foot. So there's a $250,000 deficit right at the beginning. 10 years of taxes might be 20 grand. Giving the lot back, maybe 20 grand. But we've gotten nowhere close to covering the problem we're dealing with. Bishop Rock is working on Wallace Street. In that area, listings are these days around $25 a square foot. So it'd be an even bigger lift there. So we do need some junior financing at low rates from the city or something to encourage construction. It's just a big lift. I mean, one house in an attractive area as to values in the city, and we've got a $250,000 hurdle to get over, and maybe we put 40 towards it. We still have 210,000 to get moving.
Yeah, this is just one piece. Right. Much like LERTA, it's not going to be enough on its own.
Yes.
But we've got to come up with, I think Chuck mentioned last, like continuing to do nothing is not an option. Right. We have an inventory that continues to swell. So we got to try something. We have to try it. We've been talking about this for months. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And our inventory is going to continue to grow. This is an economic decision people are making. We have to try to find that balance and tip the scale back. This may still not be enough, but we got to try.
I don't think it will.
Because it's not costing us anything.
Right. And I would move it that, we accept this proposal of the lot refund if there's construction. I'm just trying to point out, we've got a long way to go to make this economically feasible for investors or homeowners to build.
So I have a motion.
Yes, that's a motion.
I'll second it.
Good?
Yeah, that's-
Okay.
We're caught
Okay.
up.
All in favor for the
Aye.
develop, for the policy change? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Aaron, for putting that summary together. That was a big help.
Yeah.
Okay, we move on to developer proposal, Eastside Renaissance.
All right. So as Bishop Brock discussed, Eastside Renaissance is interested in some structures. They have an aggressive rehabilitation plan, and certainly, between the Land Bank and the Redevelopment Authority, we have properties that are eligible. So the three properties in front of you today, 405, 407 East 7th Street, 612 East 9th Street, and 606 East 11th Street. Keeping in mind, 606 East 11th Street is actually two structures on one parcel. So it's four residential structures. Essentially, they want to save from demolition. We were under demolition contract because historically, developers aren't interested in these type properties. They are severely distressed. And so we had them assessed, labeled, and bid out for demolition. And so they want to step in and acquire them. So they put together the proposals with the associated purchase price for each property, along with a scope of work for each property. Pretty generic in general as far as the rehabilitation goes, and Paul is here to talk about it if the board has questions. But again, like I said, these three properties initially are what's in front of the board. They haven't been put out, and just to be transparent, we haven't put them out for developer proposals. We went straight to demolition contracts. We signed demolition contracts. They stepped in and would like to pull them off. I don't feel we need to put them out as we do some of the properties for the public to review. One, they are a neighborhood organization. It is our prior practice to give neighborhood organizations, really the pick of what we acquire. And also, they've stepped forward and saved it from the properties. I wish we could, give them a little incentive of taking the demolition costs and put it forward, but we can't. Those come from Act 152 funds. That's not our money, that's the county's money. So it's going to save us and allow us to use that money for 3 other demolitions and hopefully save these 4 structures and turn them into some kind of home ownership opportunity. So
I have a question. Is funding lined up for these renovations?
Paul, Bishop Brock.
Yes, so funding is lined up for that. We do have a commitment from the foundation for renovation costs of these properties.
From which foundation?
Erie Community Foundation.
And how much are they going to fund?
The initial 12 homes that we have for the first phase of the project is $900,000.
Wow, you've done some great work.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we have that broken down to around $75,000 per parcel. After meeting with our contractors, we have a pretty streamlined process to get that number met.
Good luck. The last flat I did on West 9th Street, I spent $200,000 bringing it back up. And it's making sense now, but it's a bloody business to get these things up and running again.
Yeah, it was extensive meeting, figuring out specifically what absolutely had to be done to get this livable, to be a home that we would be proud to live in.
I have a question. So each of the properties says 12 months is a timeline.
That
So
is
are
the
you
goal.
working on is it 3 properties at the same time, or is it 1 at a time?
That would be the plan, yeah, to work on all 3 at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a couple different contractors available to do these jobs.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to say congratulations on securing the funding, and we certainly want to work with you. And I agree with our director. preference. We give preferences to the neighborhood organizations. You guys are doing great work over there, and I'm 100% behind this. So
We appreciate that.
thank you.
Make a proposal, we accept the proposal from ESR on these three properties.
I second it.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you,
Thank you
sir.
very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Aaron, last point.
So number 4, I just carried it over from last month. So as we look to put these properties out, now we'll be listing them on the MLS. What, if the board had any further thoughts on what we want to have proposals or developers submit specifically on the vacant parcels? Are we looking for site plan? Are we looking for a floor plan or just a description of what they plan to build? I just kind of want to, as we make sure we're as defined as possible so that we're getting proposals that, once we put them in front of the board, it just really saves everyone's time.
So in very general terms, I think a person who's coming forward with a plan should be put in contact with the code enforcement office. So there should be an indication they've at least had a conversation with what they need to get prepared for. Some initial discussion about finance as well, some sort of pre-approval letter, preferably. These are pretty standard things in the real estate industry. You go to buy any property, you pretty much have to have a pre-approval. In this case, with these lots, I don't know if it has to be at the same level, but some kind of indication that they either are already approved or have that banking relationship in place. But I think, again, these are fairly standard, so that shouldn't be, we're not asking them to bring much else to the table that they would have to bring anyways. I do think, and I've said this before, this should be advertised as a package, right? This lot is 100% LERTA for 10 years. This lot, in some cases, potentially all costs will be refunded to you. We can come up with that specific language, but it should be advertised like that so that when the other agents see it, and perhaps even when there's a yard sign, we can have a banner or something, 10-year LERTA, something. We got to get the attention of people. And I think it'll be an ongoing conversation. We're going to see these roll out, and we can converse back and forth. Hey, why don't you add this to the ad? Let's tweak that. Any other comments?
All right, that was it. Yeah, that was it. I just wanted to make sure if there's any other conversation. So
It's going to be an ongoing discussion, right? Because it's new. So
yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other business?
That's all I have.
Okay. Any other comments from the panel?
I would just say that, if we're going to list those 2 properties on the multi-list, we don't want to put a forbidding amount of requirements in there as to what's required, because that's going to make it tough on the realtor and chill any interest in them. And so somewhat of an informal proposal, I think we should be considering, like they just tell us what they're going to want us to do. But it should be in the ad that, if you construct a home on this lot, that the price of the lot would be refunded. And
Yeah.
put a time in there, I guess. But, keep that language simple. Don't say you have to complete 10 different forms and have your financing all lined up. We want to get some interest. We want to get some feedback. And if we make the barrier too high as to the initial documentation, we're not going to get that.
Yeah, and then just for point of reference, it's the one on West 6th Street. We had, and certainly we had a lot of interest in that lot, and we had a lot of people who wanted to put proposals in, but they were individuals who wanted to land hold. They had no intention of developing on that parcel, and it was only through the few little hurdles we were making the individuals jump through that we weeded out the people who were going to buy it for $10,000, sit on it for a few years, and then maybe sell it for $20,000 and make themselves $10,000 off of what we've already invested $25,000 into. So, you know, certainly we will leave a few hurdles in there, but we'll do our best to make it as clean as possible.
Yeah, I don't even look at it as hurdles. I look at it as verifications, right? Because if you're going to build a home, there's certain things you have to do, regardless of where you build. So we just want to see that you're going through that process. If their intent is to truly build a home, they're going to do what they said they're going to do.
Yeah.
And I think those early conversations with, you know, with the real estate team, I mean, they can filter out, you know, they get a call on a lot. Make sure you understand the intent is that there's going to be a home built here. We're not even going to bother taking this to the board.
Yeah.
You know, filter that out on the front end. So, but I'm excited though. I think this will naturally evolve as we go, but you know, I think we're going in the right direction. So, okay, is that it?
That's it.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Hope you all have a good month, and we are adjourned. Thanks.